Hey, hi there. Welcome. Take two with Jerry and Debbie. Already making our way through another week here between Christmas and New Year's. So we still get to say Merry Christmas, and we get to mean it. So Debbie, Merry Christmas again today.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. I am loving this week. It is just a beautiful, just wonderful celebration of Christ's birth, and it's a great thing to be able to say Merry Christmas. I don't say Happy Holidays, Jerry. I say Merry Christmas.
You don't say, have a great sparkle season?
No. No. I've never even heard of that. Where have you heard?
Winter break. Winter
break.
Something
That's
like
right.
That. Yeah.
That's right. No, Merry Christmas all the way.
No, yeah. Some people will contort themselves into oblivion to try to get out of, even mentioning the word Christmas. And, that's okay, I guess. That's where they are in life with God. We can simply pray that God would reveal himself to us, because the fact that God has revealed to us himself and the incarnation and the birth and the mission and ministry and death of Jesus is pure gift for each and every one of us. So it's something we can pray for other people. But Debbie, since we are in the middle of the Christmas season here, I thought we might want to do a program on time spent away from the church, because one of the reasons, the sea and ears, the Christmas and Easter people who come to Mass, everybody knows it. And this is not a knock, folks. This is not a knock or a criticism. I love to see the churches packed at Christmas and Easter. But if you go to Mass and plan to arrive and get in a pew at the time you usually do for every Sunday Mass, you're going to be standing often at a Christmas Mass or an Easter Mass, because a lot of people, they still see the importance of going to Mass, at least on Christmas and Easter. So with that in mind, perhaps some of these people who were once regular Mass goers, regular practitioners of the faith, and have wandered away from that very regular, devout practice of the faith. And we want to hear from if any of our listeners, if you have wandered away for any reason, stopped going to church for a month, for 10 years, for 50 years, okay? What was the reason why? And what was the trigger that brought you back? So that's kind of how I look at today's program.
Yeah, tell us your journey. There's a lot of people that you don't recognize during Christmas Mass and Easter Mass, Jerry, and I think it's a great time for us to welcome those folks and to make sure that they feel very much loved by the family, the church, and it's a great time to evangelize. So we want to hear from you. If you've wandered away from the faith and you've journeyed back, tell us about the journey. What happened during it? What was, like Jerry said, what was the trigger? We want to hear about your time away from the faith so that we can better understand, because so many of us have family members that have wandered away and are still away from the faith, and it's important for us to learn so we can understand, so we know what to expect and maybe what to prepare for. 1-800-585-9396. That's the number to get onto the show. And Jeff Burson, our social media expert, is call screening today, and he's lovely to talk to, and Jeff will put you on hold and you can listen live and jump right in. So all you got to do is dial this number, 1-800-585-9396. And may I mention, Jerry, that our Take Two family can also text us. They text the letters EWTN to 55000. You wait for a response and put your name and your question or comment in, and just keep in mind that minor data rates may apply depending on your service plan. So that's our little disclaimer, but here come the calls, Jerry. I think we've got a lot to talk about today, and that's exciting.
Well, there should be a lot to talk about. I'll put my first hand up. I wandered from the faith. We had people know who listen to the show regularly, a broken family. My parents divorced. My father wasn't around. Mom raising 5 kids, going in 5 times 10, probably 10, 50 different directions. School, clubs, classes, sports, activities, playing with friends, trying to hold down jobs as kids. So it was really, really tough. We had a church about 8 miles away, and our mom did her best to get us to that church. And unfortunately, when I went through First Communion, and this I think was a mistake on the part of the priest, because I went through all of the preparation for First Communion, and because I was from a divorced family, he would not allow me to be a part of the class that received First Communion. So that kind of ticked my mom off a little bit. And she says, well, to heck with that, So, and here's a woman, devout Catholic family, a brother a priest, a cousin and two cousins, one's a priest,
Wow.
one's a nun. And so as a family, we sort of just were away from the faith for a while, and it was never a rejection. It was just, we got burned by that situation, and we, of course, just kind of went along with what Mom wanted to do. And then as a teenager, Mom started going to Mass and really asking all of us to do that. And I just found it more enjoyable to stay home, and they had NBA games on Sunday, and I would just stay home and love to be home alone. And so it was probably about my early 20s that it started to come back to me. My mother would just share with me how on her phone calls, we lived about 150 miles away, she'd say, well, today I got up, went to work, and this happened and that happened, and then at lunch I went to Mass, and then, she was describing her day, and one day it just jumped out at me. Went to Mass, I looked, I said, this is Tuesday. What are you going to Mass on Tuesday for? And I realized we can go to Mass every day. She gave me a rosary for my birthday. I thought any mom who gives her son a rosary on his birthday, I should pray it for her out of honor for her, and then it was all over. Once you start praying the daily rosary. So I'm sorry, I went on too long there, but that's kind of my story. It wasn't like telling the church to get lost. I don't want anything to do with you ever again. I always had thoughts of God, and I know I always prayed, but there was that time away, and so I think every one of you listening may have had a period like that, maybe very much unlike that, but we want to learn from what you share with us today. Sorry, Debbie, I'm hogging the show.
Not at all, but here's the number, 1-800-585-9396 if you want to share your story, and we'd love to hear your story. But Jerry, may I rewind just for a second? I'm out of curiosity. I'm just curious. This was a Catholic religious education program, and they wouldn't let you be in the class because your parents were divorced?
Well, they let me go through all of the preparation for First Communion.
Okay.
And then when the Mass at which we were all going to receive First Communion came about, the priest said, Jerry, you're going to have to be excluded from this because your parents are divorced. And,
wow,
and I don't know.
I've never heard of that. Okay, yeah.
Well,
wow.
this would have been mid to late, probably late 1960s.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I don't know if the guidelines in the church were different then or not. But anyway, my uncle gave me First Communion the next time he was home from Thailand.
Did he?
On our kitchen table.
your uncle, the priest, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been traumatic
Maybe I
for you.
shouldn't have said that, but
No, how old were you, Jerry? That must have been very traumatic.
12, I guess. I don't know, whatever time somebody usually receives First Communion.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry that happened to you. I mean, that had to be hard because you went through all the preparation. So, well, we hear stories like this where you can really just feel, like you said, Jerry. The family feels kind of burned a little bit by the church, but we have to move on and move forward. And like what happened with you, Jerry, you picked back up with prayer and with daily Mass, and then how wonderful is that? You're back into the family, back into the fold. So we want to hear about how you wandered, dear listener, how you maybe wandered from the faith for just maybe a few months, a few years, maybe even a day or two. In my situation, it was exactly one day. It was kind of a strange story, but I'll share that later on in the show. But we want to hear from you. 1-800-585-9396. That's the number to dial to get on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. And we're talking today about, did you ever wander from the faith? We want to hear about what happened and your journey back. So stay with us. This is going to be an exciting show, as it always is. We learn so much on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
You see more and more signs that says, season's greetings. Well, what does that mean? Are we celebrating winter? And now they have cards. Okay, you got a big snowman. Are you celebrating snowman season? Oh, then they always have a winter scene, where people are in a sleigh and they're going their way. And now, I know the Eastern Rite, the letter X means Christ, it's fine. But now we don't want to even write it out. We'll put Xmas. Well, I know that says Christ's Christmas. But there are very few people who say Merry Christmas, meaning have a happy Christmas. The incarnation is among us.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
We know you like listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio, but have you thought about bringing them to your next event? No matter what type of event you're hosting, parish mission, conference, or retreat, trust Jerry and Debbie to make it come alive. Begin the process today of taking your presentation to the next level of success. For information on booking Jerry and Debbie, visit take2show.com, click on the J&D logo.
Hello, I'm Doug Keck, host of EWTN's Bookmark program, and when it comes time for Christmas, I always think about Mother Angelica and her great love for El Divino Niño, her devotion to the child Jesus, and how important the idea of the child Jesus was to Mother, the simplicity of our faith, and how our Lord came to be incarnate as a child in a manger, and how important it is for us to realize how much God loves us to do something like that.
No Catholic radio station in your area? Perhaps God is calling you to get involved. Learn more about starting a Catholic radio station where you live. Contact Jack Williams, 205-795-5756, or jwilliams@ewtn.com today.
Hello, this is Cardinal Donald Wuerl of the Archdiocese of Washington.
Hello, this is Bishop Michael Sheridan from Colorado Springs.
This is Father John Ricardo wishing you a Merry Christmas from all of us at the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
We're so glad you're with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're talking about, did you ever wander from the faith? Or maybe you're still wandering from the faith. We want to hear from you. This is why this show is so great, because we journey together, we learn together, and by this brief hour together, we walk away a little bit changed, a little bit better understanding about our faith, ourselves, the world around us. And so, Jean, you were first up, getting in very quickly. Thank you, Jean, for calling in early. You're listening to EWTN Radio in Cleveland, Ohio, on Sirius XM 130. Hi, Jean.
Hi,
Merry
how you
Christmas.
doing?
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, my journey was in 1978, actually somewhat before then, because I had some events that happened while I was in high school and college that, though I didn't leave formally right away, one year when I was at Ohio University, I didn't always go to Mass. But in 1978, when I was down in Mississippi, 77 actually, when I was down in Mississippi, I had to go for 5 weeks up to Meridian and do some internship work at to be in my preparation to be a music therapist. And I met this girl who was working at the same place I was working, and she had a blind sister. Well, one thing led to another, and she actually belonged to another denomination. They don't call themselves a denomination; they're the Christian Church. But she had been a Catholic, and so one thing led to another. I got to know the family, and I spent a lot of time with them. And one night they showed me a series of films, and the one series was people that had fallen away. Of course, starting from Adam, and the last one, film number 5, was church history, and how we strayed away from the Bible, kept the Bible locked up in chains, yada da 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 da. And they had issues with infant baptism. And, of course, making some days more special than others, and a few other issues. And I thought, well, maybe I was taught wrong, And so I had myself, quote-unquote, baptized, immersed. And that was another thing. Baptism is always supposed to be immersed. So I had myself immersed. But something just wasn't right. I couldn't shake the belief that Jesus, that the body, that the bread and wine, once consecration took place, was the body and blood of Jesus. Even though I was not that devout, I still couldn't get rid of that belief. And, of course, I told my mom and dad what happened, when they asked, and, of course, they weren't happy. But the Thursday before the Thursday before I specifically asked to come back into the church, I was thinking, and all of a sudden the thought hit me, well, if Jesus, with all that went wrong with the church, the Babylonian captivity, the 3 popes, and, this, that, and the other thing, with all that went wrong with the church, it's still around for 2,000 years, it's got to be something. So I decided then and there to join the church again, and the following Saturday, 2 of my friends stood as witnesses. I had to go through a formal thing because I had, formally excommunicated myself through baptism, quote unquote. But I had to say the Apostles' Creed, or one of the creeds anyway, and I chose the Apostles' Creed because I figured I wouldn't mess that one up. And went to confession, and it was the day before Palm Sunday of 1978. I felt very guilty, even though it was forgiven. I still felt kind of, oh my goodness, I denied Christ just like Peter. Ow, and so when I made Cursil the following year later, I confessed it again, as well as some other things that I wanted to talk to Father about, and it was fantastic. I had a fantastic Cursil. Really it was wonderful. And then a few months later, was baptized in the Holy Spirit, and within the charismatic renewal, and so that was 1979, and I haven't looked back, but I'm kind of grateful that I went through this because, well, number one, it really in a way strengthened me, for further temptations down the road that might come. But number two, there was a very good sermon that the minister preached one day on Sunday evening that said the language that you use, that you have, says an awful lot about you. And that kind of hit me because my language was not exactly squeaky clean, if you catch my drift. So I'll be grateful to him, and I still pray that one of these nights I'll hear that he's coming home to the Catholic Church, and I'll do a double flip and do somersaults and dance around and act goofy because he's coming back into the church, or coming into the church.
Well, Jean, this is not at all unusual. I know when I was away from the Catholic faith, if you heard the start of the show, it was in my late teens and early 20s, and I moved away. I went to broadcasting school. I'm living all by myself in a big city in Portland, Oregon, and I'm walking down the street, and there's an intersection. It's a major downtown intersection, and on each 4 of the corners, the Scientologists had individuals stationed, and so you couldn't avoid walking past any of them. Oh. And I'm a searcher. I mean, I want to know the truth, and I like people, and I like to get into conversations. So before I knew it, I was inside their building, and they're showing me this and showing me that and telling me all about this. And I think finally I just said, you know what, it's just a bit much for me right now. And I left. But Debbie, what Jean is telling me is she has had a heart that has been searching, and God will honor that. Yeah. Seek and you will find. And the problem today is too few people are open to seeking because, I don't know, maybe they're afraid of what they'll find. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. And what I take away from your story, Jean, is this. You have a deep appreciation and a deep attachment, a good attachment to the Eucharist. And that was tugging on you as you chose to walk in. Obviously it was a scripture-based religion that you were seeking out, and you were going down that path, but the Eucharist was calling you. You have a deep appreciation for the Eucharist, and that's what the saints had. So think about that for a moment. How huge is that? There's a lot of people walking around who are Catholic, unfortunately, who don't have that deep appreciation for the Eucharist, and you have it. So I think you're blessed. That's what my takeaway is from your story. And I think it's a wonderful, by you sharing it, it is a great witness to all of us that we need to appreciate what we have in the source and summit of our faith, the Eucharist, and how wonderful that is. So, Jean, any final comments on what Jerry and I had to say about your story?
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt. The other thing is, there were a couple of other questions that I had that I asked. And people that I asked that were Catholic didn't seem to know. And I mean, I know they weren't the most important questions, but one of the questions I had was, why the genealogies of Matthew and Luke were so different. And it was the minister who first kind of told me, at least, in his opinion, why it was so different. And since then, though, I've heard other Catholics say the same thing. But at the time that I was reading, and also, I didn't, when I first got the Braille Bible, I don't know how this happened, but one of the first things I turned to was Revelation, and I went, whoa! And there weren't that many Catholics, I don't think, studying Revelation at the time. I've since grown to love the book. I love it. But anyway,
But Jean, thank you for saying that, because this is why we do this show, because as Catholics, we are called by our baptismal call to be formed in the faith all the way until we take our last breath on this earth. That's why I was an adult formation director for many years. And Jean, you shared that, and it's very, very important that we as Catholics become as well formed as we possibly can, so that when we are asked those questions, those difficult questions, we have an answer, or we have a resource we can point others to. That's what we're called to do, to journey together. Thanks, Jean. What an amazing call. I'm so glad you were the first call, because I think you set the stage perfectly for this conversation. And God bless you, and thank you, and for being part of the family, coming back into the church. Thank you, because you were missed. And that's what people need to know, Jerry, is that when people walk away from the faith, they're missed.
They are. So welcome back, Jean, and thank you so much for your call, your inspiring testimony here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Dear friends, we're talking about your time away. Was there ever a time during your life? I'd love to hear everybody be able to say, nope, I was born a Catholic, baptized 2 weeks later, and never, ever, ever missed Mass, and never doubted my faith, and never wandered, never looked into anything else. But I think the story in most of our lives is that we did spend some time away, searching for something else, maybe reacting to something that happened or was said to us in the church, and God willing, the Lord brings us back. That's what we want to talk about. So all of you on the line, you have got fantastic questions, so please be patient. We just take you in the order that you call, and that means Kathleen is next in Indiana, listening to EWTN Radio on Redeemer Radio. Hi, Kathleen. Welcome, and Merry Christmas, first of all.
Merry Christmas to you, too, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. So what would you say about this?
Well, this topic is very close to my heart. In 1966, my parents left the Catholic Church on account of an incident of racism that happened in connection with our parish in a large city where we all lived then. And my parents had spent their lifetime standing up for racial equality, not in any kind of harsh or confrontational way, but just simply because they believed that was the call of Christ to welcome the stranger. And in Matthew 25, and they were just doing what was our normal as a family. They invited friends of theirs who happened to be our mutual God families in our parish in a city where we used to live. They came and visited us, and we kept their two little girls who were ages 7 and 9 in our house for a vacation, and we had no idea that this was going to be offensive in any way to our white Catholic neighbors, who also were our fellow parishioners. And it shocked us that we ended up having death threats. One of the threats was so bad, it came at 3 a.m, and a woman said, "Have you sent the girls away?" And I was the one who answered the phone. And I was just a kid then myself. I was something like 16 or 17.
Kathleen, please hold that thought. This is. I'm hanging on every word, and I know Debbie is as well, and our listeners. And please interrupt. Pardon the interruption here. This break is for our affiliates so that they can air some local content information for their listeners in their local areas. So we give them this, what we call a hard break. It's fixed at this time every day, but we will continue with you on the other side, Kathleen. So stay with us.
Living the Beatitudes with Father Bjorn.
Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. If you're on a football team, you don't want to just run up and down the field holding the ball and never cross into the end zone and get a touchdown. If you're on vacation, you don't want to drive all the way to Orlando and then never enter into the Magic Kingdom. We want to reach our goal, but there are a lot of obstacles, discouragement, and challenges along the way. Jesus' voice is the one calling us to say yes to Him, to live the life that He's calling us to live. We have to choose one way or the other, choose Him or not. But if we choose Him, we will be opposed. We're going to have people challenge what we believe or call us crazy. But Jesus doesn't just say, come follow me, to follow a beatitude. He's calling us to be like Himself. He is the Beatitudes. He doesn't just say, do what I say. He says, come follow me. He's with us every step of the way, transforming our weakness into strength. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
The EWTN home video highlight for December is The Inquisition. Discover how the Church handles witchcraft, heretics, Galileo's theory, and more as historians cut through the controversies in this EWTN original miniseries. Order your DVD set at EWTNRC.com. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or call 1-800-854-6316.
EWTN Radio Classics is our 24/7 teaching and devotionals channel, straight from the EWTN archives. Go classic with EWTN Radio Classics, online at EWTNradio.net. Now available on the EWTN app.
Hello, this is Bill Donahue from the Catholic League.
Hello, this is Bishop Ronald Gaynor of the Diocese of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
This is Father Larry Richards. Have a holy and blessed Christmas from all of us at the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Thanks for being with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Before the break, Kathleen from Indiana was talking about a situation that happened in 1967, I believe, of racism that happened by parishioners and neighbors of theirs and the impact that had. So, Kathleen, please forgive us again. That was the one break we had to take. So if you could kind of rewind about 10 seconds and we'd love to be able to listen to the rest of your story.
Sure. The death threats that came to our family were very bad because we had two African American small girls in our house, and we were completely shocked by this because we had lived with an open door policy to people of all races and ethnic groups for my entire childhood. And one of the death threats was so bad, a lady called at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was the one that answered the phone, and she said, "Have you sent the girls away?" Meaning the African American girls that were in our house. And I said no. And because a bunch of people had come from the parish and had actually pushed their way into the house and were yelling and screaming and threatening us and demanding that we send the girls away. And my parents very courageously stood their ground and said, no, we're not going to do that. And that night at 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang and a lady said that since we hadn't sent the girls away, all the children in our house would be killed. And my parents left the church after that, and there were eventually our house was they had to move because my father's lost his job, and they moved out of state, and our house was torched as it sat vacant waiting to be sold. And it was a tremendously difficult time, and I have to speak to people whose children have left the church because I am one of them, and partly it was because my whole family left. But there's a feeling that people who have not left the church wouldn't recognize, and that's why I want to say this. I felt very enlightened and very superior to the people that had done those things to us. And when I left the church, I felt enlightened and superior, you might say. And that's one of the things that I think would have been a blockage to me coming back, because if you've been wronged by somebody in the church and you feel better than those people, then you feel like you're in the right and they're in the wrong. But what ended up happening in my life is, after leaving the church, I went through some hard times, and thank God, the Good Shepherd doesn't leave the lost sheep to just wander forever. And Jesus came after me. He used a very unlikely situation to bring me back to the church. I was an agnostic for a short time, and felt very enlightened and very superior to all those people that were so weak that they needed a God. And I'm speaking in terms of how I thought then, not how I think now.
Sure.
But I was at a job, and a seminarian was a volunteer there, and he suggested that my supervisor go to a Catholic prayer meeting. And the woman was the mother of 10 children, and she had to go on public transportation. She did not have a car. And she asked me if I would come with her. And the only reason I said yes was because I wanted to protect her going on public transportation in this big city. Now, I'm not sure exactly how I was going to protect her. But in my mind, I couldn't stand the idea of a mother of 10 children coming to harm with all those children depending on her. So I started accompanying her to these prayer meetings. And the prayer meetings were really not my cup of tea. I only was being polite to her. And she was my supervisor at work, so I kept going. And the thing that really turned me around, this is so important for parents who have had children that have lost their faith. The thing that turned me around wasn't anything that was said. It wasn't the religious jargon, which was very offensive to me at that time. It was the love. There was such unconditional love by the people in that prayer group toward me, and I was trying my best to make them dislike me. I was being really rude to them in meetings, and I was one of the kind of people that probably would have been thrown out nowadays from a prayer meeting. But those people in that prayer meeting were so loving to me, and they prayed for me, and they constantly... I was really angry at these people were white, and I was angry at white people, even though I was a white person myself. And they just took me under their wing and loved me. And the unconditional love is something I'd never experienced before. And I did not deserve it. And I think that's the thing that is so important when we're trying to interest people in giving Jesus a chance and giving the church a chance, maybe again, and for some people for the first time, is that it's so important to love those people, not because they deserve it. Sometimes we get this idea that we only want the good and the healthy to be part of our church, but our church, as Pope Francis has said, is a hospital, and the people who need Jesus the most are the people who are sick. And that's what Jesus said. I came not for the righteous, but to call sinners.
Right, right.
And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, Kathleen, we're glad that you had the courage to share it, and you were prompted, obviously, by the Holy Spirit to call in, and it helped all of us. I know you don't need us to say this, but first of all, my blood pressure is sky high because for many it's okay because it's a good thing. It reminds me that we need to say these things sometimes, and I feel compelled to say it on behalf of those very ignorant people that were in the pews that did what they did to your family and that wonderful family that you took into your home. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that ignorance was so powerful that it drove your family away from the church. But I'm also so grateful to God that the unconditional love that you felt from that prayer group and from God, obviously, because like you talked about the Good Shepherd, that unconditional love is what drew you back in. So that makes me very, very happy. One thing I want to share, though, is I kept, as you were telling your story, I kept saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Meaning those parishioners, they really, the ignorance, it's terrible. The one thing that we have to be grateful for, and a lot of people don't even know this as Catholic Christians, thank goodness for our African priests that are coming here and are in our dioceses and are helping to fill the gaps that we have with some priests not being in certain areas. I have a lot of friends who are priests from Africa, and thank goodness that our priests are being formed in Africa and coming here and helping, because without the priesthood, we can't have our sacraments. And so it's very interesting how things come full circle. And I just want to say that your story, I wish it was something that was unusual, but unfortunately it's not, because racism does happen in all shapes and forms. And we're actually going to be doing a show on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Jerry, what day is that?
It's January 16th this year.
Yeah.
And we're just going to look at, I guess, the state of racism in this country. Is there any? I don't see colors, I guess. I remember those shirts that we used to see, love, see no color. Mm-hmm. And now all we see is Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives, and and I mean all lives matter. But we're going to have a discussion about maybe what is the current state of racism, and is it really as bad as maybe the media want us to think it is, and what can we do? What can we do to eliminate it? So right. But Kathleen, I am equally inspired by your call. We're going to let you go on that because we got others to get to here, as you can imagine. But you have truly helped to make this show a great show, and all of our callers are the same. So Kathleen, you are blessed. You are blessed. Your heart is in a beautiful place, and I know many people are going to benefit from the message that you just shared on the radio, but more than that you share in your day-to-day relationships with people. So thank you, Kathy, for being on with us here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. What a sweet heart she has, Debbie, and sad, unfortunate situation, but at least in her case, God brought very, very good things out of it.
Absolutely. Kathleen said it so beautifully, the Good Shepherd. I mean, he finds us, and he wants every one of us. And with that unconditional love, we can be brought back in to the family. Beautiful, Kathleen. Thank you. Okay, Jason, you are up next. You have been so patient. You got our Patience Award today, our virtual Patience Award. I don't know what you're going to do with it, Jason, but I hope it sits on your shelf in Houston, Texas.
Well,
Hi,
if he has
Jason.
a virtual shelf, he can put it on there.
Yeah. Hi, Jason. Merry Christmas.
Hi, Merry Christmas. I just want to, first, I'll give you a compliment to Jerry and Debbie, because y'all embody St. Francis and the future of the church. Y'all have dialogue. Y'all are so open-minded, and so I'd never hear y'all judge it. Y'all the only radio station I hear in Catholic radio. I change it after y'all, but maybe that's just my preference. I'm a millennial, and I think y'all really speak to a lot of people like St. Francis, and I think that's what the church needs.
Wow.
But
Thank
to get to my story, I was in and out of the church, and when I finally started to go back, because I felt peace in my heart, I ended up going to, I guess, to the most conservative church in Houston. I don't know why I picked that one. And I took my wife, who is not Catholic. I was trying to convert her to Catholicism. And she was seeing, like, it was like, whoa, like, this Catholicism? Like, no. But it was like, but she wanted that church because it's so beautiful. And this priest was 80-something, maybe that's why. And there was only like 20, 30 people on Sundays. And I know y'all were talking about how, in Canada, only 5% of the people that go, because the message hasn't changed. I'm not trying to say the doctrine needs to change, but just the message. And you're talking about gays or people that are, you called me a pagan because I had a child out of wedlock. I started laughing, but I was like, all right, whatever. And I was like, I had to confront them and tell them, look, every generation's different. Your generation wasn't as good. Y'all weren't good on race. Y'all treated women horribly. And then y'all losing so many people in the Catholic faith. Y'all are driving them away. And every generation has its problems and its pros and its cons. And I just told him maybe you just need to have a more open-minded Pope Francis. Just maybe change your message a little. He didn't like that. But I want to recommend anybody that that's having conflict with religion. Luckily I live in Houston, and the parish that I'm at now has an English Mass, Spanish Mass, and a Hindu Mass, because there's a lot of Indian Catholics here in Houston, and they get it passed. So don't let a certain priest, dictate what is Catholicism. Because even every culture, every race has its own version of Catholicism. Some, like Pope Francis, has a Latin version, which is my preference. The Hindus have their own. Africans have their own. But, that's why I recommend people. And I recommend anybody to listen, just keep on listening to your show because it's such a great show, and y'all embody St. Francis. Pope Francis.
Jason, you've probably brought us both to a point where no caller has ever brought us before. We're both kind of speechless right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jason.
That's a very kind compliment. We receive it, obviously, as a reflection of what we believe God has called us to do and is doing in and through us on this program. And I think the way you described it is what we want to do. We want to be for any and all ages a platform where people can become better. They can share what's going on in their lives. And Debbie and I can maybe offer a little bit of a comment, and then somebody later in the show will call in and say, hey, for Bob, I just wanted to say to help Bob out, and just really create almost like social media for the ears. And so I'm glad that you recognize that, Jason. We appreciate you listening in Houston and calling. And Debbie, I know you probably got a couple of things you want to say.
Well, I just want to say, Jason, I think it's beautiful how you're just so open. And I love the fact that you had a nice conversation with the priest and just talked to him man to man, because so many people don't do that, Jason. They will get a comment from a priest and it'll just turn them bitter and they'll walk away and they'll sometimes even leave the faith. And that's not right, because here's the thing, priests are human beings. And it's okay to talk to them in a respectful way. And if it doesn't quite sit right, there's other priests. And I say this all the time. And we actually had a priest on one time, Jerry, on the show, who I asked him that. I said, Father, what happens if somebody goes to confession to you and it doesn't seem right? And he goes, go to another priest. And it's true, because they're human beings. And I love the fact that you had the courage to do that, Jason. I think that is wonderful. The one thing I just wanted to ask you real quickly, I know we got to move fast, but is your wife in the church now, or is she still going to Mass with you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, now she converted to Catholicism with my son, because we, had a wedlock, but I'm still with her. We have 2 children, but it's with the same woman. And she was hated Catholicism, but now I showed her the Latin version, I guess Spanish Mass.
Okay.
She loves it. And there's also Hindu Mass. And so that's what we prefer. And if anybody out there, there's Catholicism universal. If you live in a big city, you can find Vietnamese Mass, Hindu, and we just stuck with the Spanish.
You'll have to help me with that one, Jerry, because
different process.
Yeah, Jerry, I've never heard of a Hindu Mass, but so you'll have to help me with that one, because I've never heard of that.
Is it in a Hindu language? I don't know. Is there a Hindu language, Jason?
Here in Houston, there's a huge Indian population, and they come from a certain area that was colonized by the Portuguese, so they're all Catholic.
Okay. Oh, they're Catholic. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's wonderful that your family is in the church, and that's beautiful. And Jason, see, here's what's great about it. You said you were a millennial. You are the leaders. You're the next generation for our church, and it's important that we hold on to our Catholic faith. And you're speaking strongly about that, and I just want to affirm you in that. I think it's awesome, Jason. And Merry Christmas to you, and a Happy New Year to you and your family.
Yes, your family united in the Holy Mother Church. It's got to give you a great feeling, Jason. Thanks for calling from Houston and Guadalupe Radio. We appreciate that. 1-800-585-9396. That'll get you on the program. There is still time. Debbie and I are talking about if you've spent any time away from the faith. Maybe you didn't reject it. Maybe you didn't become an apostate or anything. Didn't write that formal letter to your bishop. I am no longer going to practice the Catholic faith. This is an official act. But maybe you just, for a time, whatever, Mass wasn't important to you, praying, observing the other precepts of the church just wasn't important. Other things took priority. It happens to all of us. Happened to me. Debbie, we still need to hear from your brief foray outside the church before the show ends. But I want to mention, too, that for those who listen or want to listen to this program, maybe don't have an AM or an FM station or a smartphone app, or can't get to your computer during the broadcast of the show, you can podcast it. And what that does is you just set your mobile device up to point to a particular URL. It's like a website, basically. And all of our shows and other EWTN shows are posted in various archive sections of a website. And when a new show is posted there, your mobile device says, oh, there's another show right there. And it says, I'll take that, thank you. And it pulls it down there, gets it right on your phone so you can listen anytime. Debbie, podcasting is pretty cool.
Speaking of millennials, isn't millennials, that's a big thing for them, is podcasting?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, Mike on YouTube, I just wanted to share this real quickly, weighed in and just said, his story is real quickly, after my dad passed in 1968, he got involved with the anti-war movement, got addicted to smoking pot and left the faith. Had an interior locution and was cured of that addiction instantly. 3 years later, he went back to Mass for the first time in 25 years and has never looked back. Wow. That's an interesting story. Thank you, Mike, for sharing that with us. Okay. Yeah, Jerry?
Well, we had a text as well from Sean, and Sean said, I left the Catholic Church 13 years ago when my wife and I had a civil marriage. We came back last Easter when my wife joined the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Another beautiful, beautiful story right there. Okay,
Beautiful.
we got some more calls, Deb.
Yep. Rita is listening to EWTN Radio in Minnesota. Hi, Rita. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well.
Thank you. Tell us your story.
So when I was younger, let me start over. Sorry. My dad and my mom were both abusive to my siblings and I when I was younger. But the one thing they always made us do was go to church every Sunday. And so when I got into the high school range, I started really questioning what the Catholic Church was because of my experiences and, the fact that my folks were still making us go to church every Sunday. But that was pretty much what we did. We prayed before meals and we went to church every Sunday. And I met a friend who was evangelical and, of course, drew me in right away because I was searching. I was looking for something to fill the void. And, but I still never felt quite full or fulfilled. And when I got into college, I actually joined the Newman Center. The man that I'm married to now, he and I went to a Lutheran Bible study, and then we went to a Bible study that actually Father Michael Schmitz through the UMD. I know sometimes he's on the radio. He became our priest, and through him and through Focus Missionaries and through that whole experience, we now are just so strong in our faith, and just want to say that there's so many opportunities. Sometimes it takes a lot of patience and time to get there in life, but it's just been amazing, one thing after another in our lives. My sister just had a baby after a divorce, with a out of wedlock kind of situation, and she was at the point where she was going to abort, and it was like through the help of my priest currently and a lot of faithful people to help me coach her through, and now baby's a week old, and it's just amazing things have happened. So just always keep your chin up and keep looking, because God will find you. Sometimes you just need a little bit of help, so...
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is a beautiful testimony that you shared, Rita. And the key thing you said came right at the end. Keep your head up. God will find you. I think so many times that it crosses my mind. I think that we have a world full of people who are walking with their heads down. They're looking at the ground. And I think of scripture passages, hold your head up so that your face may not blush with shame. And we remember the serpent, Moses put the serpent upon the rod. And anytime the Israelites were bitten by the scorpions, if they just simply looked up, which was a prefigurement of Christ, of course, but they had to look up. They had to, instead of the sullen, Debbie, we have this world of people who they can't make eye contact with you, and you walk past them in the grocery store, and their heads are down, and they're hanging, and they're looking away from you, and it's this sort of I don't know what's going on inside of people, but we need to be people of more hope, I think, and have our heads raised up, because if our heads are bowed down, we're not going to see what God is doing for us sometimes.
And you can't receive anything.
Yeah.
You're closed off. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Rita, I think that was your story. Although, you shared some of the tough upbringing that you had, and maybe you didn't experience some of the unconditional love in your own home, but in the church, just like Kathleen was sharing, that it is rich in the church through God. And Rita, great story, and I'm so happy the right people were in your path to bring you back into the family fully. And it's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it. Thanks for having the courage to share it, because this is our own personal testimonies, and sometimes they can be, for all of us to make different assessments about. And so when we have the courage to share our own personal stories, it's wonderful to be affirmed in it. Thank you, Rita. God bless you. Jerry, can I quickly just share my 60-second story? Because
Sure.
I said I would share it. Okay, so here's my 60-second story. Never miss Mass, never, ever, except one time. And other than when I was sick, but intentionally missed Mass. And that was because my former husband, there's no offense to that at all about him being Jewish, but he is Jewish, and he kind of was asking me to possibly not go to Mass on Sunday and watch football instead. And so one day I decided to intentionally miss Mass to please him, and woke up late on a Sunday morning. And I remember vividly jumping into the shower, and I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and I just felt sick to my stomach. And I said, okay, Lord, I'm never doing this again. That was my one brief second away from the church. And
That's
I felt...
it.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was it. And I instantly felt sick to my stomach. It hurt so badly. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't a guilt feeling. It hurt. It was painful. So, yeah, that was my brief time away from the church.
Well, and that shows how much you were a fervent and devout. And you believed in your mind, and you knew in your heart, Debbie, what was required of you. And I hate to even use that word required, because it's such a great, great gift. I know you, Debbie. I'd be willing to say you were probably more grieved over missing the Eucharist than, say, not fulfilling your obligation, which also was a problem. But you took care of it, and now all has been well since then. So cool.
Amen. Yep. So thank you for allowing me to share that. Dear listeners, you are amazing. Sean and JC and the others, we're sorry we couldn't get to you. Please email us at take2@EWTN.com, or go on Facebook, EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook. Keep the conversation going. This has been a great show, all because of you.
Yeah, we've got our last live show before New Year's tomorrow, heading back to work. Have you been away from work and returned? Maybe you retired, came out of retirement, stopped working to raise a family, had to deal with a health issue, and then a little bit later in life, you return to the workforce. We want to hear your experience about that tomorrow. Until then, Debbie,
Have a beautiful and blessed day. Merry Christmas.